At the modest kitchen table in her cramped apartment, Sophia Carter clutched the medical bill in trembling hands. The numbers blurred together, forming a mountain she couldn't climb. Her mother's treatment was essential, but with her part-time job at the diner barely covering rent, the future seemed impossible to navigate. Across the table sat her childhood friend, Emily, whose brows furrowed with concern. "Sophia, you can't keep doing this," Emily said softly. "There's got to be another way." As if on cue, Sophia's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Grant Morland, the billionaire she'd met just weeks ago through an unlikely chain of events. At 70 years old, Grant was nothing like the men Sophia imagined herself marrying. Yet his proposal was clear: a marriage of convenience in exchange for financial security. He'd pay for her mother's treatments in full and ensure a stable life for Sophia if she agreed to become his wife. That evening, with the hospital deadlines looming over her, Sophia made the choice that would alter her life forever. 2 weeks later, she stood in a lavish ceremony, exchanging vows with Grant under the watchful eyes of strangers. Her white dress felt heavy, more like armor than a symbol of joy. The first week of marriage was a whirlwind. Grant was polite but distant, treating her more like a business partner than a spouse. He handed over the hospital payments without hesitation, fulfilling his part of the agreement. Their conversations were sparse, limited to dinner at the expansive dining table in his mansion. The mansion itself was overwhelming, a sprawling estate tucked away in the hills surrounded by dense woods. The rooms were adorned with antiques and portraits, their hollow eyes watching Sophia as she wandered the halls. Despite the luxury, the house felt cold, its grandeur suffocating rather than comforting. One morning, while sipping her coffee in the sunlit conservatory, Sophia decided to explore the mansion further. She ventured down one of the endless hallways, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. The air grew cooler as she reached a row of doors. Most were locked, their ornate handles immovable. A wave of unease washed over her as she tried each one only to find a pattern. The locked doors were concentrated in one wing of the house. That night at dinner, she summoned the courage to ask Grant about it. "Why are so many of the rooms locked?" she inquired, her tone casual though her heart raced. Grant looked up from his plate, his expression unreadable. "Some parts of the house are private," he said evenly, his grey eyes narrowing. "There's no need for you to concern yourself with them." The dismissal was curt, but Sophia didn't press further. Instead, she began to notice things she'd overlooked before. The way the staff avoided her gaze, the whispers that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. Sophia found an unexpected ally in Martha, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for Grant for decades. Martha's demeanor was gentle, her sharp eyes betraying a wisdom Sophia found comforting. One evening, when the mansion seemed particularly oppressive, Sophia lingered in the kitchen while Martha cleaned. "Does Mr. Morland always keep the rooms locked?" Sophia asked, her voice hesitant. Martha paused, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Some doors are best left closed, Mrs. Morland," she said, her voice low. Her words sent a chill down Sophia's spine. Unable to shake her curiosity, Sophia resolved to investigate. She waited until Grant left for one of his frequent business trips. With Martha's reluctant assistance, she managed to unlock one of the forbidden rooms using an old key the housekeeper had kept hidden. The room was dimly lit, its air stale. Sophia's heart pounded as she stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. What she saw made her blood run cold. Photographs lined the walls, images of Grant's previous wives. At first glance they appeared ordinary, showing smiling couples at various events. But as Sophia looked closer, she noticed something sinister. In each photo, the wives seemed increasingly distressed, their smiles strained, their eyes hollow. On a desk in the corner, she found a stack of papers: birth certificates, marriage licenses, and most chilling of all, missing persons reports. Each document told the story of a woman who had vanished without a trace after marrying Grant. A noise from the hallway made Sophia freeze. Footsteps. She quickly hid the documents and slipped out of the room, locking the door behind her. Her breath came in shallow gasps as she hurried to her bedroom. She couldn't stay here. Sophia spent the next day carefully planning her escape. She stashed a small bag of essentials in the closet and memorized the routes through the sprawling estate. But Grant's return loomed, and with it, the potential for discovery. On the evening of his arrival, Sophia tried to act normal, but the weight of what she'd uncovered was unbearable. At dinner, she barely touched her food, her mind racing with possible escape routes. "You seem distracted, my dear," Grant remarked, his tone deceptively gentle. His sharp gaze made her feel exposed. "Just tired," she replied, forcing a smile. As the house fell silent that night, Sophia made her move. With her bag in hand, she crept through the darkened halls, her heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. Reaching the back door, she hesitated only briefly before stepping into the cold night air. The woods surrounding the mansion were thick and disorienting. Branches clawed at her as she stumbled through the underbrush, the distant lights of the mansion growing fainter. Behind her, she thought she heard voices. Grant's voice, calling her name. Sophia pushed forward, her legs trembling with exhaustion and fear. At last she broke through the trees and onto a desolate road. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see Grant emerging from the shadows. Instead, there was only darkness. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Sophia waved desperately, her throat raw from screaming. The car slowed, its driver, a middle-aged man, eyeing her warily. "Please," she begged, "I need to get out of here." The man nodded, and she climbed into the passenger seat, her breath coming in ragged sobs. As the car pulled away, Sophia felt the first flicker of safety, but the danger she had escaped still loomed, and she knew it wouldn't be long before Grant came looking for her. Sophia's escape from Grant's mansion was only the beginning of her ordeal. The cold night air bit at her skin as she fled through the dense woods, branches scratching her arms and face. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each step fueled by sheer determination to survive. The memory of the locked rooms and the haunting photographs of Grant's previous wives propelled her forward, despite the physical exhaustion threatening to overtake her. After what felt like hours, Sophia stumbled onto a desolate road. Her legs trembled, barely able to support her weight. In the distance, she saw the faint glow of headlights approaching. Desperation overrode caution as she stepped into the road, waving her arms to flag down the vehicle. The car slowed to a stop, and the driver, a middle-aged man with a concerned expression, rolled down the window. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked, his eyes scanning her disheveled appearance. "Please, I need help," Sophia replied, her voice trembling. "Can you take me to the nearest town?" The man nodded, unlocking the passenger door. "Get in. There's a motel a few miles down the road." "I can take you there." Gratitude washed over Sophia as she climbed into the car. The warmth of the heater was a stark contrast to the chilling fear that still gripped her heart. As the car moved forward, she glanced back at the dark silhouette of the mansion, a shiver running down her spine. The motel was modest, its neon sign flickering in the darkness. The driver, whose name was Tom, escorted Sophia to the front desk, ensuring she secured a room for the night. "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. "I don't know what I would have done without your help." Tom offered a reassuring smile. "Just take care of yourself, all right? If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask the motel staff. They're good people." As she entered her room, Sophia felt a semblance of safety for the first time in days. The events of the past weeks weighed heavily on her mind, and exhaustion soon pulled her into a restless sleep. The following morning, Sophia awoke to the pale light of dawn filtering through the thin curtains. Her body ached, and her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. She needed to take action against Grant and ensure her own safety. After a quick shower, she dressed in the clothes she had hastily packed and made her way to the motel's small dining area. As she sipped on a cup of lukewarm coffee, she noticed a young man seated at a corner table, engrossed in paperwork. His suit, though slightly wrinkled, suggested a professional demeanor. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered a polite nod before returning to his documents. Sophia's curiosity was piqued, but she had more pressing matters to attend to. She approached the front desk, where a kindly woman with graying hair greeted her. "Good morning, dear. How can I assist you today?" "I need to contact the authorities," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "Is there a police station nearby?" The woman's expression shifted to one of concern. "Is everything all right? We can call the police for you if you'd like." Before Sophia could respond, the young man from the dining area approached. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear," he said, his tone respectful. "I'm Michael Reed, an attorney. If you need legal assistance, I'd be more than willing to help." Sophia studied him for a moment, weighing her options. His presence seemed fortuitous, and she desperately needed someone knowledgeable on her side. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. I could use some guidance. In the privacy of the motel's conference room, Michael listened intently as Sophia recounted her harrowing experience. He took meticulous notes, his expression a blend of professionalism and empathy. "Your situation is indeed serious," Michael said after she finished her story. "We need to report this to the authorities immediately. Given the evidence you've described, there could be a pattern of criminal behavior here." Sophia nodded, relief washing over her. "I was afraid no one would believe me." "It's understandable," Michael replied gently. "But your safety is paramount. We'll ensure you're protected and that an investigation is initiated." With Michael's assistance, Sophia contacted the local police department. An officer arrived shortly thereafter to take her statement. Michael's presence provided a sense of security, his legal expertise guiding her through the process. As the day progressed, Sophia found herself relying more on Michael's support. His calm demeanor and unwavering dedication to her case were comforting amidst the chaos that had become her life. Over the next few days, the investigation into Grant Morland's activities gained momentum. Detectives uncovered evidence corroborating Sophia's account, including the missing persons reports of his previous wives. The media caught wind of the story, and Grant's name became synonymous with scandal and suspicion. Throughout this tumultuous period, Michael remained by Sophia's side. Their professional relationship gradually deepened into a personal connection, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. One evening, as they reviewed documents in Michael's temporary office, he looked up from his work, his gaze meeting hers. "Sophia, I admire your strength through all of this," he said, his voice steady but filled with sincerity. "Most people would have crumbled under half the pressure you've endured." Sophia felt a warmth rise to her cheeks. "I didn't have much of a choice. It was survival, plain and simple." Lucas leaned back in his chair, studying her with a quiet intensity. "Even so, you're fighting for justice, not just for yourself, but for the others. That takes courage." For the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "I guess I had some help," she said, her voice soft. "From you." Lucas returned her smile, and for a moment the weight of their fight seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet connection that neither of them could deny. Sophia sat stiffly in the back of the patrol car, the low hum of the engine a backdrop to the whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. The officer driving, a stoic man named Deputy Harris, had listened attentively to her account of events. However, his silence since leaving the motel left her uneasy. Did he believe her story? Or did he think she was another runaway spinning tales of rich men and locked rooms? The small-town police station was unimpressive, its pale walls stained by years of neglect. Harris led her to an interrogation room, where a younger officer took her statement. As she recounted the photographs, the missing wives, and the locked rooms, she couldn't ignore the doubt in their eyes. Without evidence, her words felt weightless. "You mentioned a housekeeper who helped you?" the officer asked, jotting down notes. "Yes," Sophia replied, gripping the edge of the table. "Martha. She knows everything." "All right. We'll need time to look into this," he said, closing his notebook. "But without hard proof, it's your word against Mr. Morland's." As the hours dragged on, Sophia's frustration grew. She knew Grant's influence extended far beyond the mansion. He was a powerful man, and she was just another face in a long line of women he'd silenced. Desperation clawed at her as she paced the station's waiting area. "Excuse me," she said to the receptionist, her voice wavering. "Is there a lawyer I can talk to? Someone who can help me make my case?" The woman hesitated before glancing at a bulletin board. "There's a legal aid office in town, but they won't be open until tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow," Sophia whispered, sinking into a nearby chair. Time felt like a luxury she didn't have. That evening back at the motel, Sophia's thoughts spiraled. Grant would undoubtedly realize she was gone by now. Would he come looking for her? She couldn't shake the feeling that every shadow outside her window concealed his presence. A soft knock at the door startled her. Heart pounding, she approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice trembling. "It's me," came a familiar voice. The man from the dining area, his professional demeanor earlier that day replayed in her mind. Opening the door slightly, she found him standing there, holding a stack of papers. "Hi," he said, offering a small smile. "I'm Lucas Myers, an attorney. I overheard you at the front desk this morning and thought you might need legal advice." Sophia blinked, caught off guard by his presence. "You're a lawyer?" "Yes," he replied. stepping back to give her space. "I'm here for a case in town, but I couldn't ignore what I overheard. May I come in?" After a moment's hesitation, Sophia nodded. She gestured for him to enter, her nerves easing slightly as she recognized the sincerity in his expression. Over the next hour, Sophia recounted her story once more, this time with Lucas taking careful notes. He asked pointed questions, his sharp mind piecing together the puzzle. By the time she finished, the weight of her ordeal felt marginally lighter. "This is serious," Lucas said, leaning back in his chair. "If what you're saying is true, we're looking at potential fraud, unlawful imprisonment and worse. But you're going up against a man with significant resources. You'll need more than just your testimony." Sophia's heart sank. "I don't have any proof, just my word." Lucas tapped his pen against his chin, deep in thought. "What about the housekeeper, Martha? Do you think she'd be willing to testify?" "She's terrified of him," Sophia admitted, "but she helped me unlock one of the rooms. If I could get back to the mansion, I might be able to find something." "Absolutely not," Lucas interrupted, his voice firm. "It's too dangerous. If Grant finds out—" "I don't have a choice," Sophia said, her resolve hardening. "If the police won't act without evidence, I need to get it myself." The next morning, Lucas agreed to accompany Sophia to the estate. Despite his reservations, he recognized her determination and the urgency of the situation. They parked a safe distance from the mansion, the dense woods providing cover as they approached on foot. "This is insane," Lucas muttered as they crept closer. "You know that, right?" Sophia offered a faint smile. "I've been living in insanity for weeks." The mansion loomed ahead, its grand facade appearing more menacing than ever. Sophia led the way, her heart pounding as they slipped through the side gate. The kitchen door, left unlocked by Martha, provided them entry. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Shadows stretched across the walls, and every creak of the floorboards set Sophia's nerves on edge. Lucas followed closely, his expression tense as he scanned their surroundings. "This way," Sophia whispered, leading him to the room she had previously unlocked. They worked quickly, rummaging through drawers and cabinets. Lucas discovered a hidden compartment beneath the desk, revealing a box filled with old journals and documents. As they sifted through the contents, a chilling pattern emerged. Meticulous records of Grant's marriages, financial transactions tied to his wife's inheritances, and cryptic notes about their disappearances. "This is it," Lucas said, his voice hushed. "This is enough to build a case." Before they could celebrate, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Panic seized Sophia as she grabbed Lucas's arm. "Someone's coming." They extinguished their flashlight and ducked behind a large cabinet. The door creaked open, and heavy footsteps entered the room. Sophia held her breath, her pulse deafening in her ears. "Check the study," a deep voice commanded. It wasn't Grant. It was one of his security guards. Sophia clung to Lucas, her fingers digging into his sleeve. As the footsteps receded, Lucas gestured for them to move. They slipped out of the room and into the hallway, their path to the exit now blocked. Sophia's mind raced, searching for an alternative route. Martha appeared suddenly, her face pale but resolute. "Follow me," she whispered urgently, leading them down a hidden staircase to the basement. "This tunnel leads to the woods," she explained, opening a concealed door. "Go now, before they find you." Sophia hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. "Martha, come with us, he'll—" "No," Martha interrupted, her voice trembling. "I'll buy you time, just go." Lucas grabbed Sophia's hand, pulling her into the tunnel. The darkness enveloped them as they ran, the sound of pursuit growing fainter with each step. At last they emerged in the woods, gasping for air as they stumbled toward the safety of their car. Back at the motel, Sophia collapsed onto the bed, her body shaking with exhaustion and relief. Lucas sat beside her, his hand resting on hers. "You were incredibly brave," he said softly. Sophia met his gaze, her voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lucas smiled, his eyes warm. "We're not done yet, but we'll see this through, together." The courtroom was quiet, save for the faint murmurs of onlookers and the rustling of papers. Sophia sat at the plaintiff's table beside Lucas, her pulse thundering in her ears. This was the culmination of weeks of fear, strategy, and determination. She glanced across the room at Grant Morland, his calm, unyielding expression a stark contrast to the turmoil he had unleashed in her life. Lucas leaned toward her, his voice low but steady. "Stay composed, Sophia. The evidence speaks for itself." She nodded, her palms clammy against the cool wood of the table. The documents they had retrieved from the mansion, combined with Martha's eventual cooperation as a key witness, had led to Grant's arrest. Today, the trial would determine whether justice would prevail. The prosecutor began with a powerful opening statement, painting a chilling portrait of Grant's manipulations and the disappearances of his previous wives. The photographs Sophia had discovered became a focal point, their eerie progression gripping the courtroom. Each image was a silent scream from the women who had come before her. When Sophia took the stand, the weight of the moment pressed down on her. Her hands trembled as she recounted her story, the marriage, the locked rooms, and the haunting realization of Grant's true nature. She glanced at the jury, searching their faces for signs of understanding. "Mrs. Carter," the prosecutor said, addressing her by her maiden name, "what prompted you to investigate the locked rooms in Mr. Morland's mansion?" Sophia inhaled deeply. "The house didn't feel like a home, it felt like a trap. The whispers, the locked doors. It was as though the walls themselves were hiding something. When I found those photographs, I knew I had to get out. I had to uncover the truth." Grant's defense lawyer was ruthless, attempting to discredit Sophia's testimony by framing her as an opportunist. "Mrs. Carter," he said, his voice sharp, "isn't it true that you entered this marriage for financial gain?" Sophia's jaw tightened. "I married Grant to save my mother's life, but I never imagined the price I'd have to pay." The defense leaned into their argument, painting Sophia as someone who had fabricated a story out of regret and greed. But Lucas, ever the strategist, dismantled their claims during his cross-examinations. He highlighted Grant's history of controlling behavior and inconsistencies in his financial records. The turning point came when Martha took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as the elderly housekeeper detailed her years of service under Grant, her voice trembling but resolute. "I stayed because I was afraid," Martha admitted, her eyes glistening with tears. "But I couldn't let another woman disappear. When Mrs. Carter came to me, I knew I had to help her." Her testimony was damning. Combined with the physical evidence, it painted a clear picture of Grant's culpability. The jury's expressions shifted, their initial skepticism giving way to unease. As the trial neared its conclusion, Lucas delivered a closing argument that left no room for doubt. His words resonated deeply, not just with the jury but with everyone in the room. "Grant Morland used his wealth and influence to prey on vulnerable women," Lucas said, his voice ringing with conviction. "But today we have the opportunity to end his reign of terror. Let justice prevail, not just for Sophia but for the countless women who were silenced." Hours later, the jury returned with their verdict. Sophia held her breath, clutching Lucas's hand tightly. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Grant Morland, guilty on all counts." A wave of relief washed over Sophia as the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Lucas, her voice barely a whisper. "It's over." Lucas smiled, his expression filled with pride. "You did it, Sophia, you're free." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of media coverage and legal proceedings. Sophia chose to remain out of the spotlight, focusing instead on rebuilding her life. With Grant's conviction, his assets were frozen, and restitution was ordered for the families of his previous wives. Sophia received enough to cover her mother's ongoing treatment and ensure their future. Lucas remained by her side, offering unwavering support. Their shared experience had forged a bond neither of them could deny. On a crisp autumn evening, as they walked along a quiet park trail, Sophia turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly, her eyes brimming with gratitude, "for believing in me when no one else did." Lucas stopped, taking her hands in his. "Sophia, you're the bravest person I've ever met. Believing in you was the easiest decision I've ever made." Their lips met in a tender kiss, the first of many moments that would define their new beginning. Years later, Sophia stood on the porch of her modest home, watching her young daughter chase butterflies in the garden. Lucas emerged from the house, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Life looks good on you," he said with a smile. Sophia leaned into him, her heart full. "It does, doesn't it?" Though the scars of her past would always remain, Sophia had found love and safety in a way she never thought possible. She had turned her darkest chapter into a story of triumph, proving that even in the face of unimaginable challenges,